But I'm going to introduce our first speaker today, who is Han Yuan. And Han is an associate partner at AFK Partners, which specializes in due diligence, technology consulting, and interim CXO leadership. He's also the founder and CEO of Post PC Labs LLC. Now, before Post PC Labs, he was SVP of engineering at Upwork, where he led one of the world's most distributed engineering teams, 350 plus engineers in 40 countries around the world. He was part of the leadership team that helped take the company public in 2018. And prior to his time at Upwork, Han was an influential mobile engineering leader, having incubated world-class teams for eBay and Netflix. Now, today, Han's talk is titled Measuring the Success of Delivery Initiatives. But I think he would also like me to describe that his talk is all about getting shit done. So, Han, welcome to CTO Craft Conference Day 2, and over to you.
Thank you, Giles. I appreciate the introduction. Folks, my name is Han Yuan. I'm an entrepreneur who's running a self-funded incubator called Post PC Labs, as well as an associate partner at AKF Partners. AKF Partners was founded by the CTOs of eBay and PayPal and specializes in helping companies scale through due diligence, technology consulting, interim CTO placements. I've also been around the industry for more than 20 years. I won't bore you with what my teams did, but I hope to share with you some of the stories throughout the talk. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm here today to talk about ideas about getting things done at work in a way that makes your customers happy, your teams happy, and you sane by structuring the game of work so that your teams can keep score and win. And I like the framing. I like framing work in the form of a game, because when we play games, we know what we want to accomplish. We know how to score points, and we experience the consequences of winning and losing. Said another way, all we need to do is have a goal, measure the right things, and keep score. But as professionals in the field, we know that this isn't easy in practice because we've seen a few things. Have you ever seen your colleagues wonder how they can help their company besides making their boss look good? Or have you ever been in an organization where everyone is working really hard, but products aren't shipping and the competition is catching up? And have you ever noticed that some people skate by and others get blamed? You know, maybe when you held a more junior role, you tried to work within the system, but now that you're the CTO, the buck stops with you today. So today, I want to share with you a few thoughts on how I make sure my teams have a goal, measure the right things, and keep score while avoiding some of these cultural pitfalls that we've all experienced. So let's break it down. Have a goal. Everyone has a goal. You're saying to yourself, Han, this is not a groundbreaking idea. However, the struggle teams and companies experience is not usually the absence of a goal, but a goal that's inspiring and actionable. Consider the following sample goals. Improve uptime from 99.5 to 99.7 next year. Improve uptime from 99.5 to 99.7 next year by migrating our data center assets to the cloud. I have a mistake here. Let me just click through this. So suppose you have these 4 goals. They vary in both specificity as well as magnitude of the ambition. So let's go ahead and take a look at the first goal. The first goal feels too incremental, and one small change might help the whole organization get to 99.5 to 99.7. The second goal is, potentially big and ambitious. After all, you're improving uptime from 99.5 to 4 nines. But it invites a broader question, which is, how do you get there? A clever engineer might come up to you and say, hey, I have the plan, Han, for us to get to 4 nines of uptime or even 5 nines of uptime. Let's go ahead and not ship any product next year. And so the solution space potentially is too broad when you have these audacious goals, but without the necessary guardrails. On the flip side, thinking through a goal that has perhaps narrow ambitions like 99.5 to 99.7 through a data center migration might come off as overkill for your team. Hopefully, intuitively, you've arrived at the sweet spot, which is this final goal, which is let's go ahead and improve uptime to 4 nines with a specific method in mind, which is migrating our data center assets to the cloud. It implies that we not only need to maintain the status quo, but we need to leverage cloud technology to take our uptime to the next level. And with a problem that is framed in this way, it helps teams think through how they're going to solve that problem in a constrained way while having an ambitious goal to allow them to do big and bold things. What sets these goals apart, as I suggested earlier, are really 2 dimensions. Do you have a strategy? And do you have an incremental or ambitious goal? You know you're on the right path when your teams have a strategy behind their ambitious goal. So stick to the far right quadrant in this 2x2. As Giles mentioned, and as I mentioned earlier, I used to work at Upwork, one of the world's largest marketplaces for remote work. And when I first joined Upwork as head of engineering, our company goal was to increase revenue year on year, which is, I would argue, a goal for most companies. So all of the many teams at the company would work really hard to figure out how to improve revenue. But for several years while I was at the company, we fell short. One year, we decided to focus our strategy by building strong relationships between people who need work done. We call them our clients, as well as the people who wanted to get work done, the freelancers. And by concentrating this marketplace to, at the time, the US domestic marketplace. This very, very focused strategy inspired the product managers, the engineers, and frankly, the whole organization to think through what would be a cohesive product offering that would best serve a domestic labor marketplace. And what ended up happening was in the ensuing 18 months, the company grew north of 25, 30%. It became an absolute rocket. We went public very soon after. For me, it was one of the more extraordinary examples of what happens when you pick an ambitious goal with a specific strategy in mind. Having a goal is great, but you do want to make sure that you are measuring the right things. If you're measuring the wrong things, even if you have the right level of ambition and you have a strategy in place, you may find yourself not going anywhere. In the previous example, to make this real, we discussed uptime. And asking teams to improve uptime on the surface seems reasonable enough, right? But as the CTO, you really need to put yourselves in the shoes of your team. And to give you a perspective, we've all stared at these kinds of graphs before. As we all know, there are a whole lot of things that go into an uptime computation. If your teams are able to recover faster, you may be able to improve your uptime. If your teams are able to escalate the page, you may be able to improve your uptime. In addition to the plethora of tooling, process, and procedures, as well as upstream, how the code is even built, all of these things may factor into ultimately your uptime metric. So those are just a few of an extremely large number of factors. Uptime and measures like uptime, such as revenue, are lagging indicators. Lagging indicators help us understand if we're winning and losing. But the thing is this, the lagging indicators don't actually help the teams play the game. If I'm a DevOps engineer, what can I do to improve uptime? And so as the CTO, your job is to help your teams play this game so you can all win. And the way to do that is to make sure that every team is measuring the things that help them play the game better. For the site reliability engineering team, it may mean improving mean time to escalate. And for the individual Scrum teams, it may mean improving their mean time to respond. Improving those metrics over time can certainly improve uptime writ large, and also give teams a very concrete point of view on how their daily activities can help support the broader company's goals. In contrast to lagging indicators, these types of indicators that I've just described, they're leading indicators. Leading indicators predict future conditions. And they're great because they help each team measure their contribution to the organization's broader goals. Lagging indicators, in contrast, assess the current state of the business. Also important because you need to know where you are at any given point in time to know and to assess what you need to do to get to where you want to be. In the 2010s, I was at a company, Netflix, and the teams that I happened to be on, we built some of the very, very early mobile products at Netflix. My time at Netflix was pretty amazing. We even saw the launch of Netflix in the UK, something that I'm never going to forget. Netflix at the time was not the global streaming video juggernaut that it is today. And in fact, when I first joined Netflix, we only had about 30,000 available titles to view. And back in the old days, for the kids at home, we used to have these things called DVDs, and Netflix was known to ship these DVDs through the post. So streaming was a very, very new thing. And so how did this company goal each and every one of us to drive this streaming business? Netflix is a subscription company. And like a company of that nature, you would expect that, revenue is very important. And so driving subscription revenue is very important. But as a member of the technical team, in my case, on the mobile team, how do we help drive subscription revenue? What was fascinating about Netflix at the time was that Netflix's leading indicator, what they really impressed on teams, was not so much how much our quarterly numbers were as far as revenue goes, but we were all focused on a very simple leading indicator, which was the number of free trials, the percent of free trials that stream more than 10 hours of content in the first week. It's a very simple metric in some sense. Of course, super smart people on the team had figured out that with a very high probability, if we can get customers to stream more than 10 hours in the first week, those customers will effectively convert and renew indefinitely. For people like me playing the game, this was an easy game to imagine. Working on mobile, we needed to make sure that we had to conserve battery life. If your battery conked out on your phone while you're watching a movie, there's a chance that our customer may not get to those 10 hours of streaming. Other sort of more prominent features that folks are now quite familiar with include the post play that happens after you finish the video. How if you stay long enough at the end of your show, something else automatically plays, and that seems like a sneaky way to get people to continue to watch. You didn't need a central leader to say build this and build that. By setting the parameters on how you play the game, by setting the parameters on how we may win the game, the workforce itself is going to come up with any number of innovations to drive the business, to drive those lagging indicators. Finally, I want to spend just a little bit of time talking about keeping score, because if you have a goal, you measure the right things, but you don't keep score, and you and your team won't know really if you're winning or losing. Where's the scoreboard, right? So for the first several years at Upwork, I would attend hours of operations meetings a week. These were absolutely brutal. As an engineer, attending meetings is not what I derive a lot of pleasure from. And ahead of each meeting, product managers and their engineering counterparts would present these very long, detailed, what I would call vanity metrics of their product, and regale us with these amazing demos of product yet to ship. And I used to think that by showing up to these meetings and making a smart observation on occasion, I was holding teams accountable. It turns out that that's really not the case. You can't just hold teams accountable by showing up to meetings and saying something smart. And in the first several years of doing that, I would look back on our body of work and ask myself, what did we accomplish in all of these meetings? And the only thing that I could tell myself, or the only thing I could conclude, is that we had this Google Drive full of very long and beautiful memos. But you know what? Your customers don't care how you got there. So it took a while, but I was able to convince some of my colleagues that the memos really are not worth much. And instead, let's bring teams in for 30 minutes once a month and have them report on their leading and lagging indicators. No fancy narratives, no ornate presentations, just a spreadsheet showing which metrics went up and which metrics went down month over month, and an explanation for why something improved or not. Keeping score means not just looking at the numbers that you and your team agree on that drive your business. It's also deeply understanding the relationship between those numbers and having those kinds of conversations with your team on a regular basis. I want to just drive home a couple of tips real quick on this. You know, at first, you may discover that your leading indicators don't actually impact your lagging metrics at all. That's totally normal. In fact, proving that you're measuring the right leading indicators is one of the trickiest things to figure out if you adopt this framework. So don't give up. Your team will get there eventually. In my experience, this could take as long as 6 months. So the other thing that I would like to talk about is you are going to get to this place where teams think they're going to be able to achieve a certain metric by a certain time. How are they going to improve a given metric by when? And the actuals. Discussing the variances between the predicted and measured outcomes is very, very important. Because only when you know and going through the thought exercise of understanding why those variances occurred, can you get better about both choosing the right leading and lagging measures to measure, but also the prediction mistakes that you made when you chose those goals to begin with. And because of all of these challenges, the reality is that it's going to be an imperfect science for a while. So encourage your teams to really rebase their metrics from time to time as they learn new information and adjust continuously based on new learnings. You might also have some pleasant surprises. I've also seen this in the past where once folks adopt this framework, they realize that what they thought were audacious goals are now eminently achievable, and they need to be even more ambitious, which is frankly an amazing problem to have. But you know, when it's dialed in, when you have a goal, you measure the right things, and you keep score, that's when the magic happens. I hope you get there, because when you do, you'll find that work becomes really fun, and you might just start winning. To summarize my points for this talk, have an ambitious goal with a clear strategy. Measure the leading and lagging indicators, and skip the memos, hold teams accountable for moving numbers up. Thank you for your time. My name is Han Yuan. You can reach me on LinkedIn or han@akfpartners.com. Thank you.